Hi, welcome. My name is Mary McLeod Jones. I'm with the Structural Insulated Panel Association. Today, we're going to be talking with internationally renowned building science educator Al Cobb about structural insulated panels and what you need to know about installing them. This is a little bit of an introduction. So, Al Cobb, take it away.
So to jump right in, we're at the overview or the introduction of installation of panels. So this really needs to start with what type of panel package are you installing? Did you order a blank panel package, pre-cuts, or a ready to assemble, meaning that all the lumber was pre-installed into the panels? It's going to make a difference, the tools that you need, the time that it's going to take to install, maybe even the crew size, what and all of the things that are going to go into putting this package together. I typically approach most jobs with a crew size of 3 to 4. 3 to 4 people is typically all that's needed. Now, I've done commercial projects where I had 30 people on the job site, but for most average SIP installs, it's probably going to be a 3 or 4 person crew. And as long as one person on that crew is well trained and really understands what's going on with SIPs, the other three could, be perfectly honest with you, be people that are in good shape, know how to lift weight, not scared of heights, can move around and lift panels and climb up a ladder, operate a nail gun, and you're in pretty good shape. So that's really kind of the crew size that's going to be necessary. There's a nice list in the printout of the tools that are needed. I think it's well done. It's my two favorite tools, the tools that I would not show up on a job site ever to install panels without, is a ratchet strap and a power plane. Now, those tools are listed in their printout, but I'm going to tell you that when it comes to moving panels around, the ratchet strap is your best friend. And when it comes to making sure that panels slip together and they don't catch while you're trying to pull the joints together, the power plane is the best way to put a little micro bevel on there to make sure that they do slide together. So keep that in mind, highlight it, know that those are the two tools that you really do need to make sure that you have. When you show up on the job site to get the project started and you've unloaded your panels, the first thing you're going to check typically is, are you flat, are you square, and are you level? This can be done with laser levels, it can be done with tape measures, it can be done with all types of things, but as any carpenter will tell you, the job site or the deck needs to be flat, it needs to be level, it needs to be square and dimensionally accurate. Where we talk about tolerances plus or minus, I would always like to see the deck or the foundation, the slab, whatever it is that I'm setting the wall panels on, to be a little large, not a little small. If it's a little large, I can let panels grow. It's easy to do. Panels can basically grow in some cases when you don't even want them to, but they're easy to make grow, so it still fits on a slightly larger footprint. But if the footprint's too small, you're breaking out saws and you're cutting and you're taking material away to make it fit. Because I can assure you that when the panels were cut in the factory, they were cut to a blueprint that was drawn on a computer that was, in fact, square. So if you try to build your building out of square with SIPs, it's gonna bite you. It's gonna show up. You'll understand what I'm saying when you put up your first panel package on a out of square system. As you go through the subsection 7.0, you're also going to see a whole bunch of SIP installation tips. Those SIP installation tips are well done. They're well thought out. There's a number of them in there that I think you absolutely should pay close attention to. The one that wasn't on there that I'm going to add is number 4. It says review SIP shop drawings for hold down locations if required. I'm going to do a pre-construction meeting and a sit down with the builder, with the homeowner, with the subs, with the installers, whoever I'm going to do. The one person I'm always going to have at that meeting, if at all possible, is going to be the electrician. The electrician, which we'll talk about more in some chapter down the road of ways, when the electrician is on site at a pre-construction meeting or looks at that panel layout drawings, they can then verify where the installer needs to make sure that there's chases, pathways, markings, pre-drills, things that are necessary for the electrician to be able to do their work. Now, this is kind of a change from a lot of, I'll say, carpenters, people that are typically just framing a house or working in stick frame construction. They're not thinking about what it is that the electrician may need or how the electrician is going to get from point A to B. But as a SIP installer, you have to be aware and pay attention to that other trade that you don't typically pay attention to. You need to know where you need to drill for the electrical to get into the crawl space or the basement. You need to know where that chase needs to come up into the wall panel and how the wire is going to get around the corner, how it's going to get up into the corner for the corner lights, whatever it's going to be. The SIP installer that's properly trained and doing what they're supposed to do understands the electrical code and the requirements. And this is why having the electrician review those drawings is just so terribly important. The other thing I would say that is a good installation tip is if you can put it together or do it on the ground, do it on the ground. Don't try to, pre-drill, put your chicken sticks on, pre-assemble. Don't try to do it all up on the roof, up in the air. Do everything you possibly can on the ground. I will, in many cases, pre-assemble entire roof sections on the ground. The crane doesn't even show up until day 2, but day 1, we're going to get the panels out. We're going to get them prepped. We're going to get the lumber installed. We're going to get them pre-drilled. We're going to do everything we possibly can on the ground where it's safe, where we can move quickly, where we're not having to be tied off and deal with fall arrest and things of that nature. We want the crane, if we can manage, to cut the number of lifts in half. It's cheaper, it saves us money, it saves time, it gets the job done a whole lot quicker. So pre-assembly on the ground, incredibly important. I would strongly recommend that. And then before we jump into the next subsection, I want to talk about what was not mentioned in here, which is equipment, SIP equipment for installation. You got a couple of options. An extending boom forklift is probably the most common option. The next one is going to be a crane. And lastly, I'll throw helicopter in there just because I can. I've seen one project set with a helicopter and it was way too expensive. So let's ignore helicopters and stick with forklifts versus cranes. If you have experience with those, great. You're going to need it for setting panels. If you're dealing with anything that's going to be of a large size and considerable weight, you're not going to want to set a 700-pound panel by hand. So you're going to need the forklift or the crane. Forklifts work great when it comes to unloading the panels off of a truck, much better than a crane. They will move material around on the job site, much better than a crane. They will allow you to use things like man baskets, certainly much better and cheaper than a crane. However, the crane has the ability to reach further and get where a forklift might not be able to get. It also doesn't take one of the people off your crew because the crane typically comes with a crane operator as well. So all that being said, you need to make a comparison between which piece of equipment is better for your job site. And a lot of that might just be, what is the job site? Can we even drive around the building with a forklift, or do we have to get a crane on site? Is the roof too large and we need the reach of the crane? All good things to understand when you're thinking about that.
Thank you, Al. So that concludes the introduction of SIP installation with Al Cobb. To find out more about Al Cobb and Al Cobb SIP School in person and virtual live trainings, visit sipschool.org. Also, please make sure to tune back because we're going to be continuing our conversation with Al about installing structural insulated panels. Additionally, SIP electrical, plumbing, manufacturing, shop drawings, and more. Make sure to go to sips.org to download free resources, including the Building with SIPs Need to Know brochure and the Best Practices Guide that we use today, along with several others. They're all free to download, and we look forward to having you a part of the SIPA community. So thanks again for tuning in. I'm Mary McLeod Jones, and until then, bye bye.